Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica and a continuing series, Survival Horror Sanctuary, where I take a look at some of my favorite rare, obscure survival horror games of all time. And today we're taking a look at Carrier on the Dreamcast. This game gets written off a lot as just a cheap Resident Evil clone. While it certainly is that, pretty much every survival horror game that isn't Resident Evil is a clone. It definitely has a lot going for it, but honestly, it's less of a Resident Evil clone and more of a Deep Fear on the Sega Saturn clone. I did a video on that on my Saturn series and I will link it below, but these games share a lot of common DNA, which means I'm very prone to liking it. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, with that notification bell, definitely helps me out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down there as well. But don't worry, I won't blow your helicopter up if you don't participate. But honestly, Carrier is a lot of fun. It is an excellent survival horror game. It's cheesy, it's violent, it's all the things you want in sci-fi, horror, and nothing else. My only complaint about the game, and it really isn't one, is that there are a lot of in-engine cutscenes, and of course the voice acting is quite bad. That's what always happened back in the day, but it does like to interrupt the game at the beginning and kind of make the pacing a little bit slow. But I can guarantee you that if you get through the first 30 to 45 minutes of this game, you're going to find a lot to like. And compared to Resident Evil with the pre-rendered backgrounds, this is all in-engine 3D, so we get a lot of nice camera movement through the corridors of this ship. And the reason I compared it to Deep Fear in the intro is Deep Fear takes place in an underwater research facility, where Carrier, obviously the name, takes place in the open seas on an aircraft carrier. But however how you slice it, being in the open water with no escape is a frightening thing. I love swimming, I love the ocean, but the idea of being on a boat that at any point in time could be so far from land that if something happened you had no escape is definitely something that I would rather not participate in, to be entirely honest with you. I don't have a lot of phobias. Spiders is one, and the open water is now number two that you guys know about. But that's what Carrier does so effectively. I love the environment of this game, this aircraft carrier. It just looks perfect. It's exactly what you would expect it to be, and I love how dark it is, because some games, even if they are survival horror, are quite light. I love the atmosphere of Carrier, how dark the corridors are, how light plays off. I will say though, the voice acting is pretty atrocious. I'm not actually going to make you guys listen to this. I'll give you a little voice acting towards the end, but that's the one strike against the game. But honestly, if I'm going to strike that, I'd have to strike the original Resident Evil and Resident Evil 2 as well. But you get just drip-fed enough story at the beginning to make you wonder what's going on. Clearly, some sort of virus has taken over the ship. People are losing their minds, and it is mutating the ship members into zombies. That's really all you need to know to kick off an inciting incident for a good survival horror game. And I will say the gunplay is quite good as well. You get a lock-on reticle when you're aiming your gun at something, and it will follow relatively decently. You can't just pull out your gun and expect it to auto-aim, but it's going to work decently fine. And you'll see here that an artifact from the Ark came aboard the ship, and there was an explosion in the engine room which spread this parasite around. So already, just a couple minutes into the game, we're getting enough content to let you know what in fact is happening. And now that we've seen our first few zombies, they're going to be everywhere in the ship. And they are pretty bullet spongy. You're definitely going to have to unload on them. Ammo is generous in the game, but it definitely isn't a situation where 2 bullets is going to destroy your opponent. It's advisable to kind of back up, give yourself some space, and if you don't have to shoot them, you can run right past. But I will say the AI is pretty aggressive, and 7 out of 10 times you are going to get nabbed when they take hold of you. But as we go through this new door here that we have the key card for, you're going to see that something organic has taken over. The ship is being morphed, and I do love that kind of body horror element to it. There's some sort of parasite or fungus or plant that is invading the human body and turning it into what it wants it to be. And if you're wondering, no, that butterfly is just a butterfly, you can't shoot it. I thought maybe it was an enemy. It's been a few years since I played the game. But I love the atmosphere in Carrier, and I love the soundtrack as well. So go ahead and listen to a little bit of the droning music here, and I'll be back in about 45 seconds to tell you more why, if you've never played Carrier, you're missing out. But enjoy. Soundtrack maybe be too strong of a word there. It's more of an ambiance of the aircraft carrier floating through the water with that low mechanical drone that you would expect from a ship. But you will see here, and I'm doing this intentionally to prove a point, is that not everybody on this aircraft carrier is an enemy. That was actually a human being who I shot for a point. You can tell them to go topside so they can be evacuated from the ship. So there is a little bit of a search and rescue feature in the game. You don't have to escort them up there, thank God, but you can tell them to get out. But Carrier loves throwing curveballs at you. In this cutscene, right through that door here, we're gonna all of a sudden find out that some zombies can be invisible, and we only know he's there because there's footprints dragging through those bloodstains. We do have a visor, however, though, that tells you if something's a zombie or a human, and it tells you where it is if it's invisible. The nice thing is the aiming reticle will identify that zombie, and once you shoot him, he does blink in and out of visibility, so it is relatively easy, but it is a nice extra benefit to the game. It kind of feels like Enemy Zero on the Saturn, where the enemies were invisible, except in that game it was almost impossible to find them. And of course the automatic rifle holster's out of guns. Of course it would be. Why wouldn't they give us an automatic rifle so quickly? But I just really enjoy Carrier. It always gets relegated to the B tier survival horror games, and always just gets that Resident Evil clone label stapled right on it. And the funny thing about calling something a clone is that, like I said earlier, everything is a clone of Resident Evil. Resident Evil is a clone of Alone in the Dark. These games don't get made in a vacuum, and just because Carrier has a lot of the same mechanics as Resident Evil doesn't make it a viable or bad game whatsoever. I mean, it is a completely different setting, it's a completely different story. Of course it has tank controls, and it has those survival horror elements of having to deal with all of your inventory and power-ups, but otherwise it stands on its own merit, and it's just a game that I don't hear mentioned that much, and it's one of my favorite survival horror games on the Dreamcast by far. I mean, of course the Resident Evil games on the system are incredible, but Carrier doesn't get anywhere near the credit it deserves. It's got a lot of suspense, it's got a lot of jump scares, it's got a lot of confusion as to how to navigate the ship, you're backtracking a lot, it's got everything I want in survival horror, and the story is relatively decent too, outside of that bad voice acting, and really, I can't give a strike for that. But I love how that door opens up and an invisible zombie comes through. The game loves giving you those suspenseful little cutscenes to tell you something's happening. And if you aim a headshot just right, their heads explode, and you can never complain about an exploding head in any video game. It's one of the best things going. But sadly, this game got reviewed pretty average to below average upon release, and I think it's actually better looking back at it, and I love whatever this zombie is swinging from the plants. It definitely gives you a good jump scare. When this game came out, things like Resident Evil Code Veronica were out, and it's really unfair to compare Carrier to something like that because Resident Evil was so popular. But now, in 2022, taking a look at it, we don't have to judge it against the games that it released alongside or near. We can just judge it based on its merits, and I just absolutely love Carrier, and I think a lot of it's down to the environment. I love these dark corridors with the flashing lights and how the light interacts off the walls. I love that you can go topside and you have these gigantic open environments to explore and check things out. The zombie designs are good, the boss designs are great, the soundtrack, while pretty mechanical, is a good time. And like I said, the only strike I have against Carrier outside of the slow opening where the cutscenes are maybe too long is the fact that the dialogue is just pretty terrible. And I know I promised I would let you listen to it, and it's coming very shortly, but now that we've got up to the navigation deck, we're going to get a little bit more of the game to unlock, and we're going to be able to see more of what Carrier has to offer. But we're still just in the intro. I just want to kind of wet your whistle to make you want to play this game. But I promise you bad voice acting, and I'm definitely a man of my word, so enjoy this absolute mess.
Hey you! Are you human?
Yeah, I'm Sergeant Ingalls from the Spark team. You're safe.
There's nothing to accomplish here. There's nothing to do but abandon ship.
Calm down. Evacuate to the flight deck. Help is on its way.
If you don't leave, they'll kill you.
I mean, I've definitely heard worse, but I've definitely heard a lot better. But yeah, that's Carrier. I'm curious, have you guys played this game before? Leave me a comment below and tell me what you think, or if you haven't played it, if you're going to after you've seen the video. Short of that, I will be back next Tuesday with an episode in Survival Horror Sanctuary, and I'll have videos on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday as well. But I can promise you, if you're looking for a new survival horror game you haven't checked out and you haven't played Carrier, you can emulate this, you can play it on original Dreamcast, but however you do it, play it. We'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.